Before I get to introducing our panel, what I'd like to do is just take a moment and zero in on why this is so important to the state of Wisconsin. If you think about it, go up, I went too far, there we go. If you think about it, the most important outcome of economic development is to make sure that we grow, expand, and attract companies that export a good or service outside of the region that you're in or outside of the state. If you think about it, it's the only way we get net job growth, and it's the only way we get net income. These are the numbers for southeastern Wisconsin. 275,000 jobs in companies that export a good or service outside the region. They support another 325,000 jobs in the supply chain. And the spending of those 600,000 jobs create the other 400,000 jobs. Education, restaurant, hospitality, healthcare. So this is why Foxconn is so important, because it sits squarely in the bucket of a company that's going to export a service, a product, and a technology outside of Wisconsin. And to see the impact of this shows you, we've been talking about an economic development campaign over the last 5 years that is delivering in the millions. Foxconn puts us quickly in the category of the billions. So this $10 billion capital investment, 13,000 new jobs, 25 million square feet is a critical component of what's going to move Wisconsin forward. So with that, let me very briefly introduce our panel and get quickly to the Q&A. And I'm going to start on my far left with Secretary Neitzel. He's been the Secretary of the Department of Administration since 2015, former PSC Commissioner, Senior Vice President at MG&E, and I think your last stint in school was an MBA from the University of Chicago. So Scott, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Next to him is Secretary Hogan, Secretary and CEO of the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation, 40-year career with M&I. I think you finished or retired as Executive Vice President, Chief Credit Officer, and I know you did your undergraduate work at Stanford, which I'll note is 11 points behind.
No, it was
or Notre Dame.
Notre Dame. Yeah.
Sorry, Notre Dame. I got a little ahead of myself there.
Yeah.
Notre Dame, which I'll note is 11 places behind. Yeah. 11 places behind the Badgers in the college football polls.
Yes, they are today.
And now to our Stanford man, and they're 8 points behind the Badgers, or 8 places behind the Badgers. Dr. Louis Wu. He is a special assistant to Chairman Terry Goh. Louis had a successful career in the startup technology area. Had an extensive stint in Asia with Apple and has been with Foxconn since 2008. And it's a treat to have all three of you here today. You were the architects behind the vision of Chairman Goh and Governor Walker to bring this project here. You were the architects, the three wise men that helped pull this deal off. So, Louis, I'm going to start with you. Kind of the first question I have for you is, I think people kind of know who Foxconn is, but I want you to tell this audience who Foxconn is, and as you've described before, if you were doing the same thing here you were doing in other parts of the world, you wouldn't be here. So what is Foxconn going to do here in Wisconsin?
How much time do we have?
About 2 minutes. We can come back to the topic.
Well, let me just share with you what Foxconn is all about, maybe in numbers so that we can put it into perspective. Last year, I think our annual revenue is about 135, 140 billion US dollars. So we were ranked at number 27 in Fortune 500, the global Fortune 500. And also that if you look at our industry, so we are in the consumer electronic manufacturing industry. So we are certainly the largest one. If you count our industry, we are holding currently 31.9% market share of the total industry. So that means that if you add number 2 all the way to the number 11, the total revenue is less than ours. So that's how large we are. In terms of number of people that we employ, in fact, at the end or at the back, when the governor was speaking, I was testing both Secretary Neitzel and Secretary Hogan if their knowledge of the population of the cities in Wisconsin. So of course, the most populous city in Wisconsin is Madison. It's not Madison, even though we're in Madison, it's Milwaukee. So Milwaukee, I was told this morning that you have population of 602,000. Correct? In Madison, we have 233,000.
Correct.
Right? The next one is Green Bay City. It's about
104.
104,000, right? Then the fourth one is Kenosha City. It's about 99,000. The fifth one is Racine City. It's about 79,000, right? And then the sixth one would be Appleton, right? 73,000. Then we include the seventh one would be the Waukesha. Waukesha is about 71,000. So you add all this together, it's about 1.26, 1.27, 1.3 million people. That's how many people we employ at Foxconn. But we don't hire babies. And we don't hire old folks, I'm the exceptions. Right, because you want to have the average age of people look more respectable. That's why they hire me, right? Just to add it up. Yeah. So that's how large we are. And also, when people look at Foxconn, they sometimes mistaken us only as a manufacturer. In fact, we are one of the largest patent holders in terms of IT patents. We currently own 80,000 patents and about 142,000 in filing. And we are ranked at number 18 out of the whole world in terms of the number of patents held from the US Patent and Filing Departments. So we are a technology provider. In the most recent poll from MIT Technology, a review that we are ranked at number 30th as the most smart companies in the world, both in terms of use of innovative technology and also the successful implementation of innovative business models. So I can go on and on and off, and go on and on to tell you what Foxconn is all about. Yeah. But let me come back to what we are trying to bring to Wisconsin. And let me categorically say that we are not building television here in Wisconsin. Or to be more precise, we are not only building television in Wisconsin. The biggest and the most capital intensive investment we have is close to $10 billion to build the Generation 10.5 TFT LCD fab. Basically produces the largest display. The largest display is about 107 square feet, which is equivalent to the size of 2 king-size beds. So the annual product of which when we are rolling out in about 3-4 years from now, after the fab is being built, would be about 7 million units a year, which you put it together would cover about 1/3 the area of the city of Milwaukee. Right? So that's one of the things that we're going to do in Wisconsin. And at the same time, we'll be putting together a high precision molding and also tool and die facility. At the same time, we will do what we call back-end packaging facility, plus a front-end assembly line for whatever end-user product we're putting together. So that's the kind of thing we plan to do in Wisconsin. But that's just part of it. I think the most exciting part is to work with the Wisconsin companies, be it startups, small or large ones, to build vertical solutions on this, what we call the 8K plus 5G ecosystem. That's the excitement. But I'm sure that the next question you're going to ask me. So I would pass it on to the other two participants.
Yeah, Mark, let me have you just pick up on that line of thought. What does this mean to Wisconsin's economy?
Well, when you just look at the numbers, we have a GDP that's just about $309 billion in 2016. And when you look at a company that will, the numbers will be $7 to $8 billion of revenues that'll be generated out of here. It's $10 billion worth of construction before that. It's an $800 million payroll. So the numbers are significant. But more importantly, I think, Tim, is the fact that over a period of time, we're really changing the course of Wisconsin as a leader in technology. And that's the critical aspect of the whole thing, because in the end, you can look at a lot of different things that are happening around, and the people in this room, I've said it many times, the thousands of companies, the hundreds of thousands of employees that have been active in the manufacturing. It's part of our legacy, it's part of our DNA. That's why we got this opportunity. And we can build on that. And it's taking that and taking it really to another level. And being able to do it, not just because of Foxconn, that's clearly an important part of it, and it will be the driver behind it, but from an academic and from a business and an economic development standpoint, the opportunities are limitless.
So Scott, you guys work closely in kind of helping pull this deal together. Kind of balancing the economics of this and the taxpayer side of this. Why is this a good deal for Wisconsin? Why is this a good partnership?
Well, there's several reasons, and I'll try to touch on them quickly. When you look at the investment that the state is making, that $3 billion, I think the headline number sometimes was a little bit of a wow factor. But if you kind of peel that back and look what it's going to be on a year-by-year basis in the budget, it is manageable. What I like to say is that the state budget doesn't exist as because there's a lot of talk about the return on that investment that doesn't pay back, pays back over 25 years, which I actually think is fairly pessimistic. I think it's going to be sooner than that. But let's just take that as a given. The state budget doesn't exist as a sovereign wealth fund. It exists to achieve public policy purposes. And what are those public policy purposes that are achieved with this investment by the state? I think you can get online. What do we most want? Good paying, family supporting jobs. Check. There's 13,000 jobs ultimately, and maybe more, with an average pay of about $54,000 a year. So that's a public policy good. Two, we saw in the governor's presentation, we want to reverse the brain drain, right? We want to have a brain gain. We want to have industries that exist where our graduates stay here and are incented to stay here. So that's another public policy good, number two. Three, we want to encourage entrepreneurship. Well, we got the big investment, 13,000 jobs, but let's think about all the supply chain, not just the big suppliers that are going to have to set down next to Foxconn, but I think about what I like to call the suppliers to the suppliers to the suppliers. And think about all the entrepreneurs across the state who will, one, start a new business to supply something to somebody because of this investment, or two, a company that's already here that gets bigger, that adds more employees, and those employees have to shop someplace, they have to live someplace. So if you just look at those kind of secondary, tertiary, quaternary kind of effects, I think that is going to encourage a lot of small business entrepreneurs. So that's a public policy good. And another public policy good that the state receives out of this is just moving us up kind of the thinking top of mind for venture capital. Foxconn, as a leading technology company, one of the leading technology companies in the world, with Foxconn saying, we want to be in Wisconsin, here's the ecosystem that we want to build, that's going to attract a lot of venture capital into the state. We're already seeing a lot of talk about venture capital re-looking at Wisconsin, or looking at Wisconsin for the first time. So that is yet another public policy good. So if you look at all those public policy goods, this is a great investment. And then I always like to end where we started. It has a payback too to the taxpayers. So I think if you look at it from an investment perspective, from the state's perspective, this will pay back many, many, many times over for the state of Wisconsin as we go forward in the next 20, 30, 50 years.
Louis, over the last couple of months, we've had a lot of dinners with you, and you've given us a tutorial on 8K 5G, this ecosystem. Can you explain kind of what that means for the work you're doing here and some of the applications in the verticals like automotive, manufacturing, healthcare, homeland security?
Sure. Maybe I can explain briefly what the fab is going to produce. It's basically would be the largest display that help us to not to capture but to display images, videos up to the 8K clarity. Of course, at the same time, we're investing in companies that would be able to give us very cost-effective image capturing cameras that would be up to the 8K level. So what that means is that it would provide us with the opportunity to see things which is really beyond our naked eyes today, right? Would be 4 times as sharp as 4K and 16 times as sharp as 2K. So you take medical solutions, so that would enable medical doctors to do remote consultations or joint consultations, right? At the same time to do nanosurgery, to reduce the blood loss by at least 90%, right? So that's just on the medical solution side. If you look at the advanced manufacturing, with that would help us. If you look at the, let me take just any smartphone. If you look at the surfaces, a lot of time this is that we are now counting on human being, naked eyes, to see whether there's any scratches, right, before it's being qualified as the high quality finished products. But again, with the 8K plus 5G, they would be able to capture us in the image. So even to be that the naked eyes would not be able to detect, they can. And they can make amendments before the final product is released. So that would also help advanced manufacturing into the future. Yeah. So there are many examples of this kind. So we'll be building up the ecosystem. We will be looking at the developer community to help us to build vertical solutions.
Has that phone been released yet?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
In fact, I covered it up already.
Mark, part of your job, big part of your job, is going out and selling Wisconsin. Since the Foxconn deal has come to fruition, you've been overseas a number of times. Are you seeing kind of an uptick in awareness from this deal? Is this having a kind of that kind of payoff for us?
We are. We actually, beginning with the Haribo announcement back in, I think that was back in March, up to 400 jobs, almost $250 million down in Kenosha County. That was a trigger because that is the Haribo's first North American manufacturing facility. They chose Wisconsin. And so we saw some immediate reaction to that. And then certainly with the Foxconn transaction, we've also received additional interest from outside the United States, but also within the United States. And so we'll work through that. But our goal, Tim, is we have a group of employers, again, many of the people that are in this room that have been providing the state of Wisconsin with the employment opportunities and the taxes, and it's our mission to make sure that we're taking care of them, but also take care of the opportunities that come upon us to make sure that we're able to leverage all of that.
One of the things that Wisconsin does really well is balance economic development and the environment. And as you guys work through this deal, I want to ask you first, Scott, and then you, Louis, from each of your perspectives. What was the goal when this project came into fruition in terms of what were your expectations from a standpoint of an environmental outcome, and then what were the company's expectations?
Well, actually, Tim, I think they're very much linked right from the beginning, and Louis can speak to this himself. But when we've worked with the company, there was a clear commitment on both sides to make sure that this development for the size would be environmentally as benign as humanly possible. And this flows right down from Chairman Terry Goh. I was with the chairman on a site visit, and he was emphatic. So emphatic.
He's always emphatic.
Show up.
Yeah. you delayed your arrival.
Exactly.
But he was emphatic about the environmental quality that is going to be around this investment. And I think from the state's perspective, and I know that people have said, well, you're kind of taking the reins off. That's simply not true. that what we're doing here is actually, as far as wetland mitigation and replacement, is more than the state's ever done before. The company and state government have a commitment to make absolutely sure that this facility is done in the most environmentally sensitive way possible. That's a commitment from state government, from the local government, and from the company. And it speaks to, and I don't know if I'll get another question in here yet, so I'll just say this, it speaks to kind of the collaboration. I think President Cross talked about that. This has been a collaboration from the beginning, and as we move forward, the collaborative relationships that have been built are going to help us as we move forward. The state, the locals, the nonprofits, the regional organization, the company, it's been a collaboration, and that is very apparent on the environmental, what we're trying to accomplish environmentally as we build out this 8K 5G ecosystem.
So Louis, how did Foxconn approach this?
Well, first of all, we have to look at or ask ourselves why we attracted to Wisconsin, right? And mostly it's people, just because of you guys that we are attracted to Wisconsin. But at the same time, it's very clear to us is that to continue to recruit talents and to retain talents, we must maintain and even increase the pristine of Wisconsin, right? It's the beauty of Wisconsin. It's the environmental friendly Wisconsin. So it's just like wherever we go, we are upholding the highest standard of environmental protection where the community demands, and we should go beyond that. So this is in our commitment. Yeah. So it's no question that, that's one of the reasons why we like to be in Wisconsin. Yeah.
Let me ask you, all three of you, a question, the same question. What's next? What's next on this project for WEDC? What's next from the state's perspective? And what happens next for Foxconn?
Well, I think from WEDC's perspective, and the governor talked about this, and Tricia Brown will be talking about that later this morning, about our goal of trying to attract the workforce and retain the workforce. And this is something that we have been working on with WMC and our partners throughout the state over the course. I've been involved for 2 years. It goes before that. And we're starting to see some of that traction take place. So workforce is a key part of that. And then the other side of it is making sure that we are introducing Foxconn to as many supply chain partners in the state of Wisconsin as possible. And we will be adding an employee that was part of the legislation whose primary responsibility will be talking about supply chain, not just for Foxconn, but for all employers throughout the state, but making sure that the work that's being done in building the $10 billion facility in southeastern Wisconsin, that the benefits of that will be seen in the northern part of the state, elsewhere in the state.
Yeah, I guess from my perspective, Tim, to go back to your football analogy, I would say that at this point, it's kind of like the end of the first quarter. And what happens now is a lot of kind of basic blocking and tackling that has to be done to move the project forward. The site plans, the working with the locals, the extending, the infrastructure to accommodate the plant, working with the company. So it's going to be a lot of blocking and tackling with a lot of participants as we move. Now we have the contracts, we have the vision. Now it's about implementing that vision, and that's what we'll be focused on, at least from the DOA perspective. It's just those blocking and tackling, nothing sexy, but stuff that's got to get done to bring the vision to fruition.
I think blocking and tackling is pretty sexy, by the way. Louis, what comes next for Foxconn?
Well, I cannot use the analogy of American football to explain.
That's okay.
But I'm quite sure that I'm not as optimistic as Secretary Nysel. I would imagine that the first quarter is definitely not over yet. I think that we are just finished singing the national anthem.
Of the first game of the year,
Yeah.
of a baseball season.
Yeah. I would rather paraphrase what President Kennedy once said when he was talking about his vision of the space program for the next 10 years. And he said that, I remember what he said. He said was, probably some of you were not born yet. Yeah. And he said for the next 10 years, the reason why we chose the space program, we want to land the first person on the moon, and also many, many more things to be done. We chose to do so because they are difficult. They are not easy because they are difficult. Yeah. So I believe that moving forward, we need to work together. And the excitement to Foxconn is not only just building the fab. So I think that seems to be straightforward because we have done that before. Right? But if we are doing that, we have no business to do so in America. We should have just kept our business, continue to do so in Asia, which we have been doing it so successfully in the last 40 years. So we have to do things very differently. Right? We have to look at how we can take advantage the advanced display that we are going to manufacture here in Wisconsin by building up an ecosystem, attracting developers all over Wisconsin and all over the region, all over the United States to build vertical solutions. Right? That's where the excitement is. That's where we need to look at for the next 10 years.
So a lot of people in the audience are probably thinking two things. One, you're going to spend $10 billion to build a plant, and then your supply chain spend is projected to be about $1 billion for a year, kind of equal to what Mercury Marine, Oshkosh Truck, and Quad Graphics spend in a year.
At least.
Together.
At least.
Yeah.
So from your perspective, Mark, and then from Lewis's, what's the best way for people to get involved in this spend?
Well, I think, the early side of that is going to be the construction and working through that. We do have a website out there now for supply chain in the state, and I think that's been fairly active, especially, and it kind of dovetailed into the Foxconn announcement that it had been worked on for the better part of 2 years. So we're working through that. But again, I think to the extent that you or your companies, people that you know have supplies, they have business opportunities for Foxconn, get in touch with us, and we'll try and make those connections and make sure that the people are in the meetings at the right time. But the fab will take four years, Louis, to build. There'll be an assembly operation that will start before that, hopefully in 2018, we think. And so some of that will start moving towards that fab, but early on, I think just trying to get involved in the supply chain and understand how you can be part of that.
Okay. Louis?
I just have 2 words. I would like to ask you, be patient, and because doing things in Wisconsin would be, the national anthem was just sung, so there's a lot we need to prepare. And so if you send us an email asking for a meeting, we might not be able to reply immediately. Just be patient. And so hopefully the clarity would be more in the coming of early next year or so.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let me just say that
Yeah.
the roles have reversed a little, because
I know where
because
this is going.
About 3 months ago, all I wanted to do was to talk about the contract and figure out how we're going to do the details of the contract. And my friend Louis, who is my friend, he was planning the parties. And I said, Louis, can we just focus on the contract for right now? So now the roles are reversed.
Exactly.
And I like that.
Exactly. Yeah.
So just kind of as a wrap up here, I want to ask the three of you this. 10 years from now, we sit back and look at what is the largest foreign direct investment in U.S. history. I'll say it again, 25 million square feet, $10 billion capital investment, 13,000 jobs. 10 years from now, what do you hope would have happened here in Wisconsin? So I'll start with Scott, then Mark, and we'll finish up with Louis.
Well, I hope what will have happened is we will have created this 8K 5G ecosystem and created an environment to make Wisconsin as productive in the next 100 years as we have been in the last 100 years.
2 things. One is reversing the trend and giving our children, grandchildren, the opportunity to stay in a state that they love, because there's great opportunities that are continuing to be made available to them in addition to the ones that have already been here. But as important, and I've been pretty clear about this from day one, when I first saw this opportunity, I felt like, and knew that it was going to be somewhere in southeastern Wisconsin, I felt, and I still do feel very strongly, that this is an opportunity for the under and unemployed in Milwaukee County, in Racine County, in Kenosha County, to be able to have careers that they do not have. And that will take a lot of work. It comes back to what Louis is saying. None of this is going to be easy. We need to be patient with it. But that is such a significant opportunity, and I would hope that 10 years from now, when we look back on this and the investment that's been made, we did it because it was the right thing to do. But now is the opportunity.
10 years from now, I would look at that, we would have a Wisconsin Valley would be in comparison to the Silicon Valley in California. But the difference is that, the Foxconn Valley would be an integrated software, hardware, and developer platform, right? To transform this region from what we might have been seeing as a backward manufacturing to advanced manufacturing, right? So we'll be able to be very nimble, using all the latest IT-related technology in terms of cloud computing, the big data, IoT, all this into it to produce many variety of solutions, even for a small number of audience or customers. So that I would see what Wisconsin would be transforming into.